The year was 1683, and the heart of Europe trembled. The Ottoman Empire, one of the most powerful forces on earth, was marching west once again. Their goal was not merely conquest, it was domination. The great city of Vienna, the gateway to the west, stood in their path. For centuries, the Ottomans had expanded their empire across 3 continents, and now they were determined to make Europe bow before the crescent moon. But what began as a siege would become one of the most dramatic turning points in world history. The Ottoman army was immense, over 300,000 men, an unstoppable tide of soldiers, artillery, and cavalry. They were led by Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa Pasha, a man of ambition and pride, determined to capture Vienna and deliver it as a gift to his sultan. If he succeeded, the road to Rome, Paris, and perhaps all of Western Europe would be open. The empire of Islam would stretch from the deserts of Arabia to the heart of Christendom. Vienna, however, was no ordinary city. It was the capital of the Habsburg dynasty, a symbol of European resilience and Christian power. The city had been besieged before, in 1529, when Suleiman the Magnificent failed to take it. But now, a century and a half later, the Ottomans were stronger, their armies larger, and Europe more divided than ever. Many believed Vienna would finally fall. In the early summer of 1683, the Ottoman host approached like a moving storm. Dust filled the air for miles as their banners fluttered under the blazing sun. Villages burned ahead of them, and thousands fled into the city walls for safety. Emperor Leopold I, fearing capture, abandoned Vienna and fled to safer lands, leaving a small garrison behind to defend the capital. Only about 15,000 soldiers remained to face an army 20 times their size. The defenders of Vienna were led by Count Ernst Rüdiger von Starhemberg, a battle-hardened Austrian nobleman. He was a man of unshakable courage who swore to defend the city to his last breath. His soldiers, though few, were disciplined and well-armed. Behind Vienna's massive walls, citizens joined the defense, melting down church bells for cannonballs, reinforcing barricades, and preparing for the siege of their lives. On July 14, 1683, the Ottoman siege began. Cannons roared day and night, shaking the city to its foundations. Massive trenches were dug by Ottoman sappers, inching closer to the walls. They packed explosives beneath the fortifications, hoping to blow open the gates. The defenders responded with countermines, desperate to prevent a breach. The sound of underground explosions echoed like thunder beneath the streets. Inside the city, conditions grew unbearable. Food ran low, disease spread, and corpses piled up. Yet morale remained unbroken. Priests walked the streets, blessing the soldiers, reminding them that Vienna was not just a city. It was the last stronghold of Christian Europe. If Vienna fell, all of Europe might follow. Every man, woman, and child knew what was at stake. Kara Mustafa, confident of victory, established his lavish camp outside the city. His tent was said to be larger than many European palaces, adorned with gold, silk, and jewels. He believed the siege would end within weeks. Yet, as the days turned into months, the defenders' stubborn resistance began to frustrate him. The walls of Vienna held strong, and rumors began to spread through his camp, whispers of a Polish king marching to the city's rescue. That king was Jan III Sobieski, ruler of Poland and commander of one of Europe's most skilled cavalry forces, the famous Winged Hussars. He had received urgent pleas for help from the Pope and the Holy Roman Emperor. Sobieski understood that if Vienna fell, Poland would be next. He rallied his army and began a daring march south through the mountains, determined to break the siege and save Europe from Ottoman domination. By early September, the situation inside Vienna had become desperate. The Ottomans had dug deep tunnels and were preparing for a final assault. Explosions tore holes in the outer walls, and street fighting erupted at the city's edge. Starhemberg and his men fought like lions, but their strength was fading. Just as hope seemed lost, distant horns were heard echoing through the hills. The relief army had arrived. Before the Ottomans even realized it, a coalition of European forces had gathered under Sobieski's command. His army consisted of Polish, Austrian, Bavarian, and Saxon troops, a rare show of unity among Christian powers. In total, they numbered around 75,000 men, still far fewer than the Ottoman host, but filled with faith, fury, and a determination to save civilization itself. Kara Mustafa was warned that Sobieski was approaching, but he underestimated the threat. He believed the coalition would arrive too late. Confident in his siege, he continued to press the attack. Yet Sobieski, moving swiftly through the mountains, had already positioned his troops on the heights overlooking the Ottoman camp. At dawn on September 12, 1683, he launched one of the most decisive counterattacks in history. The battle began with cannon fire and musket volleys echoing across the hills. The Ottomans turned their artillery to face the new threat, leaving the siege lines weakened. Sobieski's infantry advanced, driving the Turks back inch by inch. The sun rose high, and the battle raged for hours, dust and smoke filling the air. The defenders inside Vienna, seeing the Polish flags on the horizon, gathered new strength and launched their own attack from within the city. The Ottomans fought ferociously, but the tide was turning. As the afternoon wore on, Sobieski prepared his ultimate strike, the largest cavalry charge in recorded history. Over 20,000 horsemen, led by the winged Hussars, lined up on the Kahlenberg heights. Their wings, made of eagle feathers, rustled in the wind as sunlight glinted off their armor. Sobieski raised his sword and gave the signal to charge. The ground shook as the wave of horses thundered down the slopes. Dust and steel filled the air as the Polish cavalry smashed into the Ottoman lines with unstoppable force. The impact was devastating. The Turkish ranks shattered, panic spread, and chaos consumed their camp. Within moments, what had been an organized army turned into a sea of fleeing men. Kara Mustafa tried desperately to rally his forces, but it was too late. The Ottomans broke and ran, leaving behind their cannons, tents, and treasure. Sobieski's cavalry cut through their lines like a blade through silk. The siege was broken. Vienna was saved. The mighty Ottoman Empire, for the first time in centuries, suffered a defeat so crushing that it would never again threaten Europe's heartland. When Sobieski entered the city, the people of Vienna hailed him as a savior. He humbly bowed before the cathedral and gave thanks, saying, "I came, I saw, God conquered." It was the dawn of a new era, the end of Ottoman expansion in Europe and the rise of Christian unity. The balance of power had shifted forever. The battlefield was a grim sight. Thousands of bodies lay scattered across the fields, and the once grand Ottoman camp stood abandoned. Inside Kara Mustafa's magnificent tent, European soldiers found gold, jewels, and rich silks beyond imagination. But among the spoils of war, they also found something symbolic. The fear that had once paralyzed Europe was gone. In the aftermath, Kara Mustafa fled back to the Ottoman capital, humiliated. The Sultan, furious at his failure, ordered his execution. The Grand Vizier, who once dreamed of ruling Vienna, died by strangulation with a silk cord, the traditional punishment for Ottoman nobles. His death marked the end of the empire's dreams of European conquest. For Vienna, the victory of 1683 became legendary. It was seen as divine intervention, a moment when Europe united to preserve its soul. The Polish King Jan Sobieski became a hero of Christendom, his name celebrated across the continent. The alliance between the Holy Roman Empire and Poland strengthened, and a new confidence swept through Europe. The defeat of the Ottomans at Vienna did not just save a city, it saved a civilization. Had the siege succeeded, history might have taken a different path. The Renaissance, the Enlightenment, and the rise of modern Europe might never have flourished. Vienna's defense became a symbol of resistance against tyranny and faith in the face of overwhelming odds. As the sun set on that September evening, the smoke cleared, and the bells of Vienna rang across the city. People wept, prayed, and sang hymns of victory. The city that had been on the brink of destruction was alive once more. And in that moment, Europe rediscovered its true power: unity, courage, and the will to stand against darkness. The siege of Vienna in 1683 marked the turning point of the Ottoman expansion. It was the battle that changed the fate of continents, ending centuries of fear and ushering in a new balance of power. What began as a desperate struggle for survival became one of the greatest triumphs in European history. Yet behind every victory lies sacrifice. Thousands had died defending Vienna, soldiers, peasants, and priests alike. Their courage ensured that their descendants would live in freedom. Today, the story of 1683 remains not just a tale of war, but a reminder of what can be achieved when a people unite in defense of their home, their faith, and their future. From the ruins of battle, Vienna rose stronger than ever. The scars of war faded, but the memory endured. The memory of a time when 15,000 defenders stood against 300,000 invaders and prevailed. And through their defiance, the true power of Europe was revealed, not in empire or conquest, but in unity and unyielding will. A smoke of battle had barely lifted when the true magnitude of what had happened at Vienna began to unfold. The once invincible Ottoman Empire, which for centuries had been the terror of Europe, had suffered a defeat that shattered its myth of invincibility. The great crescent army that had marched to conquer the West now lay in ruins. And for the first time, the heart of Europe felt a sense of relief and rebirth. As dawn broke over the battlefield, the devastation stretched as far as the eye could see. Ottoman cannons lay overturned, their gunpowder wagons burned to ash. The once grand tent of Kara Mustafa, decorated with golden embroidery and silk banners, stood abandoned, filled with treasures looted from across the empire. Sobieski himself entered the tent, gazed at the lavish surroundings, and simply remarked, "This was the arrogance of an empire that thought itself eternal." The people of Vienna poured out from behind the battered walls to greet their saviors. Starhemberg, wounded but alive, embraced Sobieski as church bells echoed across the city. What had been despair only hours earlier turned into celebration. For the first time in months, food was shared, hymns were sung, and people dared to dream of peace again. But the victory was not merely Vienna's. It belonged to all of Europe. News of the victory spread like wildfire. Messengers galloped through mountains and rivers, carrying the tale of the miraculous deliverance. Across Europe, from Rome to Paris, church bells rang in unison. The Pope called it a gift from heaven. For centuries, Christendom had feared the advance of the Ottomans, but Vienna had proven that the empire could be stopped and defeated. The Ottoman army's retreat was chaotic and disastrous. Hundreds of thousands fled eastward, abandoning their weapons, supplies, and wounded comrades. The once disciplined army was reduced to a terrified mob. European forces pursued them relentlessly, reclaiming lost territories that had been under Ottoman control for generations. The balance of power, once tilted toward the east, had begun to shift. In the Ottoman capital, the news hit like thunder. Sultan Mehmed IV was furious. His empire's pride had been wounded before the entire world. The man he had trusted, Kara Mustafa, was now the face of humiliation. Within months, the order was given. Kara Mustafa was executed by strangulation, his ambition extinguished by the very silk cord that symbolized his high rank. His death marked the end of Ottoman dreams of European conquest. But Vienna's victory was not just military. It was psychological. For centuries, Europe had lived in fear. Fear of invasion. Fear of the unstoppable Ottoman tide. Now that fear was broken. The aura of Ottoman invincibility vanished, replaced by a new confidence that would reshape the destiny of nations. The age of Ottoman expansion was over. The age of European ascendancy had begun. In the years that followed, a coalition known as the Holy League was formed, uniting Poland, Austria, Venice, and later Russia in a grand alliance against the Ottomans. For the first time, divided Christian powers stood together under a common cause. Their armies pushed eastward, liberating Hungary, Transylvania, and much of the Balkans from centuries of Ottoman rule. The wars that followed were brutal and relentless. Between 1683 and 1699, Europe waged a campaign of retribution. City after city fell back into Christian hands. The Battle of Mohacs in 1687, the liberation of Buda, and the victory at Zenta in 1697 further crushed Ottoman dominance. Finally, in 1699, the Treaty of Karlowitz was signed, a peace that ended the Ottoman Empire's expansion into Europe once and for all. For the Ottoman world, the defeat at Vienna marked the beginning of a long decline. Once the symbol of power, its armies and economy began to falter. Corruption spread, provinces rebelled, and military reforms came too late. The empire that had stretched across continents slowly began to lose its grip. The 1683 defeat had changed the course of history forever. Meanwhile, Vienna rose like a phoenix from the ashes. The city was rebuilt stronger, grander, and more beautiful than before. Baroque architecture flourished, music and culture thrived, and Vienna became the artistic and intellectual heart of Europe. The memory of 1683 became woven into its very identity, a reminder of courage and survival against overwhelming odds. Jan Sobieski returned to Poland a hero, celebrated as the savior of Christendom. Yet he remained humble, attributing the victory to faith and unity rather than personal glory. His leadership inspired future generations, and his legend lived on in songs, paintings, and chronicles. But in his homeland, political divisions and internal conflicts would later weaken Poland, showing that even heroes could not save nations from their own struggles. The siege of Vienna also marked a shift in the relationship between East and West. For centuries, the Ottomans and Europeans had seen each other as mortal enemies. After 1683, that dynamic slowly began to change. Trade, diplomacy, and curiosity began to replace fear. The Ottoman Empire, though still powerful, became less of a conqueror and more of a participant in the global balance of power. Europe, meanwhile, entered a golden age of science, philosophy, and art. Freed from the constant threat of invasion, the continent turned its energy toward exploration and innovation. The Enlightenment was born, colonial empires expanded, and the seeds of the modern world were planted. In a strange way, the victory at Vienna became a spark that lit the path toward modern civilization. But the story of Vienna was not merely a clash of armies. It was a clash of civilizations, ideas, and destinies. It represented the eternal struggle between expansion and resistance, faith and doubt, tyranny and freedom. The soldiers who fought there did not only defend a city, they defended a way of life that valued culture, belief, and human dignity. Generations later, historians would look back at 1683 as a hinge of history, the moment when the East's advance into Europe was stopped forever. It was not the end of the Ottoman Empire, but it was the beginning of its retreat. For Europe, it was the birth of a new sense of unity that would shape the coming centuries, for better or worse. Legends grew around the siege, tales of heroes, miracles, and divine intervention. In the aftermath, it's said that coffee beans left behind in the Ottoman camp led to the founding of Vienna's first coffee houses, giving birth to one of Europe's most cherished traditions. Even in victory, remnants of the defeated enemy became part of the culture they had tried to conquer. For the common people, the memory of that terrible summer never faded. Mothers told their children stories of how the sky darkened with smoke, how the ground shook with cannon fire, and how faith kept them alive when hope was nearly gone. Those tales became part of the collective memory of Europe, a reminder of resilience, sacrifice, and divine providence. The soldiers who died defending Vienna were buried beneath the city walls they had protected. Their graves became silent witnesses to the price of freedom. Centuries later, their names may be forgotten, but their courage still echoes in the stones of Vienna's old fortifications, whispering the story of a city that refused to fall. The victory also reshaped Europe's politics. The Habsburgs emerged as dominant rulers in Central Europe, expanding their influence across the continent. Their empire would later evolve into the Austro-Hungarian monarchy, shaping European history for centuries. The Ottoman defeat created a vacuum that new powers eagerly filled, leading to a shifting world order. The fall of Kara Mustafa became a warning to future Ottoman leaders. Never again would the empire attempt such an ambitious invasion of Europe. From that moment on, the empire turned inward, focusing on defending its existing territories rather than conquering new ones. The dream of reaching the heart of Europe had ended forever. Vienna became a symbol of endurance. Its churches and palaces stood as monuments to survival, and every anniversary of the siege was remembered with solemn processions and thanksgiving. Even today, the people of Vienna honor those who fought and died to preserve their city and their faith. The story of 1683 is more than a battle tale. It is a mirror of humanity itself. It shows how pride can lead to downfall, how unity can overcome fear, and how courage can change the course of the world. It reminds us that history is not written by destiny, but by the choices of men and women who refuse to surrender. As the centuries passed, the memory of the siege faded into legend, yet its consequences continued to shape the world. The line drawn at Vienna would define Europe's borders, politics, and identity for generations. Without that victory, the map of the modern world might look very different. Standing in Vienna today, among the domes and spires that reach toward the sky, it's hard to imagine that once this city was surrounded by hundreds of thousands of enemy soldiers. The peaceful streets and bustling cafes hide a past written in blood and bravery. Every stone, every bell tower carries the silent echo of 1683. The Great Siege of Vienna was not just a triumph of arms, but a triumph of spirit. It proved that when humanity stands together, no matter how desperate the odds, it can overcome any force that threatens its freedom. The defenders of Vienna may be long gone, but their legacy still guards the gates of Europe. In the end, the true power of Europe was not found in its armies or its kings, but in its unity, faith, and will to survive. Against 300,000 warriors, it was not numbers that decided the outcome. It was courage. The story of Vienna 1683 is the story of humanity's eternal stand against darkness. And that spirit, born in the fires of siege, still burns brightly in the heart of Europe today.